Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
Here Ken Leisure with a pass so true.
Well, at least the flags look good, Mike, eh? That's one thing. Just about the only thing you can take from it, isn't it? Oh, hello everyone and welcome back to the Brunton Bugle, your one-stop shop for all things Carlisle United. From Jason Price to Ivor Powell and Richard Liebert to Gary Liddell, we've got it covered. In today's episode, we're going to be looking back at the last two games. We finally got 1 point out of them at least, I suppose. We'll also be looking ahead to the games against Bradford City and Mansfield Town. And as usual, a bit of news and a look at what ex-United players have been getting up to and a little quiz as well. I've already said his name there, but I'm joined by one of my regular co-hosts, and today it's Mike Booth. Mike, how's it going, mate?
Not brilliant, is it, at the minute, really?
Good as it can be, isn't it? I don't know, we're just sort of limping through the second half of the season, aren't we? There's just nothing to really get excited about right now.
We're not even limping. We've been shot and we've had both legs amputated on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's kind of how it feels like. It's not been fantastic, to say the least. It's mad to think we're recording on Wednesday here, and it's 1 year to the day since the Newport game. The last time, basically, as many people as they wanted could have gone to watch Carlisle United play live. Crazy year, isn't it, really? You know, who would have thought back then that, you know, only 5 games would have seen fans at and limited attendances for those back then. It's mad, isn't it? A really, really mad one. Anyway, let's get straight into it, Mike. We'll start off with the quiz. So this is one that we'll come to at the end of the show as usual with the answers. But the question for today's quiz is, I want you to name the 11 players who have either played for or managed Carlisle United who have been in a World Cup squad. So there's 11 players there, and we'll come back at the end of the show and give you the answers, and I'll give Mike a chance to have a little think about it as well, see if he can come up with as many names as possible. So let's go into the news. So obviously, United are still over a third of the current campaign left to play, but the EFL, they're already making plans for next season, aren't they, Mike? It's one of those things you normally get quite excited about towards the end of the season. They announce when the next season dates are going to be, but I think people are even more excited now knowing that there's a decent chance that fans are going to be back. So the plans for the 2021-22 season have been announced, and the return back to the traditional first weekend in August, isn't it? That's going to be great, guys. Now, I imagine how mental that if away fans are allowed, and I'm still not 100% convinced they will be, but if they are, just imagine how crazy it's going to be on the August the 7th, that weekend.
Oh, I know. I think like the first throw in, there's just going to be absolute limbs in the Carlisle end, like just climbing over each other, celebrating, and all the rest of it. But it'd be interesting to see what happens with the Euros first, because they seem to be saying that the final could well be full capacity if everyone's vaccinated or something. So
I'm not convinced about that.
I've got tickets, so just let me. Okay.
Let you dream, mate. That's where you go, yeah. When the season will finish depends entirely on which division we're going to be in. Can't believe I've said that based on the current form. But yeah, depending on whether we're in League 1 or League 2, because what they do now is they finish the seasons on different days, don't they, for each division. So League 1 actually finishes a week before League 2, and then League 2 finishes on a Saturday, and then the day after the Sunday is when the Championship finishes, so all games kick off at the same time, and I think they could show a couple of them live on TV as well, I think is the idea.
I have sinned recently, speaking of that. A few weeks ago, I sort of checked the Championship and sort of which teams were at the bottom end as to which teams we could potentially play in League 1. And this week I've looked at the conference table to see which teams are near the top end.
Who are near the top? You know, I haven't even had a look recently, so I haven't had the first clue.
Hartlepool are up there, Stockport are up there, Sutton United at the top of the league. That's a new away trip.
Stockport will be a decent away day, you know, I haven't done that one for a while. And Sutton, I suppose, is another London club, isn't it? So that's one way of looking at it, I guess. But
and Wrexham are up there as well with their new owners.
Oh, I'd love Wrexham. Wrexham would be perfect for us, because it's a nice short journey that over to North Wales, but there you go. Well, that brings us nicely on then, Mike, to the match review section. So we're going to look back at the games against Morecambe and Grimsby. Another week passes and still can't find a win to drag ourselves back into the promotion chase, can we? Just never ending. 8 games now without a win. Once again, we look second best for the majority of the 2 games, but the late equaliser against Mariners provides that small glimmer of hope, doesn't it? It's beginning to look like an uphill task to extend the campaign, even just into the playoffs, but that goal maybe just will be the turning point to give us a lift, possibly.
It's weird though. I mean, you're trying to look at the positives of it, but in a bizarre way, I kind of feel like drawing at home to Grimsby is kind of worse than the defeat against Tranmere. I mean, we lost against Tranmere and they were a very good side, and we kind of lost narrowly. But Grimsby, while they sort of played well as a team, there was just no quality in there whatsoever, was there really? And
it was a very flat performance, was it?
Yeah, for us to not beat them really shows how far we've fallen.
Absolutely. I mean, we spoke to the Grimsby fan last week, didn't we, on the show, and he wasn't very confident at all. He's very confident about the club's future, but about the game itself, he was like, basically saying that they had no chance. But I think we knew better, didn't we, going into that one? And obviously, predictions-wise, I predicted a defeat against Morecambe, which turned out to be true. And I picked a hammering win against Grimsby, which was nowhere near true in the end. It just goes to show, doesn't it? It's I felt angry after the Morecambe game. I just felt very down after the Grimsby one. I felt flat. I felt like the season's just petering out. We're not going to go down. Let's be realistic here. I mean, I think it's Ed Walker. If you don't follow him on Twitter, he's a really good follow for all things League One and League Two. He's a little bit of an expert. He tweeted out what the average points are for finishing in particular positions. And I think to finish 22nd in the league, sort of just outside the relegation zone, on average is 47 points in like the last 10 years or something like that. We're on 43, so we're 4 points away from that.
Well, mathematically, we are exactly the same number of points away from top as we are the relegation zone.
Goes to show, doesn't it? I mean, realistically, title is completely gone now. The top 3 is probably completely gone as well, if we're honest. It's one of those ones. So it just feels like the season's petering out towards a bit of a disappointing finish. And
yeah, I mean, it's just the players' body language when we sort of go down. They just seem like, I don't know. I mean, there's just no sort of fight there. And if you want a mild celebrity anecdote here, so as you may well know, Accrington Stanley assistant manager Jimmy Hill's wife sells pizzas on the pizza county.
Jimmy Hill, Jim Ryan, isn't it?
I thought Jim Ryan. I thought it was Jimmy Hill.
Jimmy Hill was the one who presented Match of the Day and managed commentary and all that.
Well, whatever his name, Jimmy, whatever his name is, his wife sells pizzas at the Asda in Aintree near us. Are you Googling it now?
No. Go on.
Anyway, my dad often shops there and has a bit of a crack of football with her. And a few years ago, John Coleman said to the Accrington players, he gave this speech basically saying it's all right for you lot, some of you, you're only on loan and you're going back to your parent clubs and all the rest of it, but for me as a manager, this is what I get judged on. I get judged on your results, and if you're not pulling your socks up, it's me that gets sacked at the end of the day. And that was like the turning point for Accrington. And look at them now, and I just feel the players, they're not playing like they sort of want Beech to be in the job. I'm not saying that that's the case, but they're not looking like that.
No, it's a fair point. Jimmy Bell, by the way.
Jimmy Bell, that's the one.
That's the one, not Jimmy Hill. But yeah, I mean, it brings us on to the main talking point I picked out for this review bit, Mike. When is it okay to start talking about the manager and whether his job is under threat? Because it's caused a lot of heated discussions among our fans over the last few days, hasn't it? When you look on both Facebook and Twitter, and there is a bit of a split developing. I think there was a post from the Be Just and Fear Not Facebook group that asked people what their thoughts were in terms of Beech's future. And to be fair, there was a lot of comments in support of him on that thread. But then when you go to the match review threads and things like that, people aren't that impressed. And How long can you rely on this credit for the first half of the season for? The performances against poorer teams have just been unacceptable in recent weeks. And how long do you get to the point where you have to say, it's okay to look at and say he's done really well, we're on a roll, he put us together into a team that was flying. But the other side of being a manager is to get a team out of a rut, to get a team back winning games, whether it's getting a scrappy 1-0 win. Well, in the games where we took the lead, in one of them, surely you've got to look back and think, well, why is he not... I know there's talk that Guy and Furman can't play in the same team. Why not try it? Put them both in there and say, right, we're going to sit and protect here, and then maybe leave a couple of pacey players up top and say, we just, if they get a chance to create some magic and do something, brilliant. But otherwise, we're just going to sit and we're going to try and grind this out, because carrying on playing the way we are isn't working. I mean, how long do you reckon this can go on before people start to ask questions seriously?
Well, for me, I mean, I've said all along that it boils down to, I think, start the season, the board will have said mid-table is acceptable. And as of right now, we are in mid-table. It's when we start to fall below that I think these questions are maybe going to be asked a little bit. But yeah, like you say about Guy and Furman, I mean, I remember under Keith Curley, he liked to sort of play a 4-4-2 sometimes with two sitting. And that was that year that we made the playoffs. He had Luke Joyce and Mike Jones sort of holding, didn't he? And he had Nicky Adams on the left. I think Jason Kennedy was on the right wing. And he wasn't a right winger, but he was just get in the box and cause problems. And it worked. But I think, I'd be willing to sort of change it up and do anything right now. But I think, like Joe Riley, I couldn't believe it in the George Tanner interview that he never played centre mid before. I think he was the only player to come out of that Morecambe game with any credit, I think. And we could play him as a winger, I think. We could play him as a central attacking midfielder. We could use him in so many different ways because he's just so sort of adaptable and useful.
I think he'd be a good right wing back. And I know Tanner was rested for the game against Grimsby the other night, and Beech was a little bit cute and a bit, not giving anything particularly away in terms of what had happened there. And he seemed to suggest that he'd had a conversation with George about his performances since he'd come back, and he hasn't probably hit the same sort of level that he was before. But I mean, that's to be expected, I suppose. I wouldn't mind seeing Riley playing as wing back, because actually, to be honest, second half against Morecambe, that's pretty much what he did. He played at right back. He took Tanner's role, and actually he looked a threat. He got up and down, and he can put a good ball into the box as well. It's maybe worth a try. That I don't know. It's one of those ones, isn't it?
But I think Tanner's form, I mean, he's a very good sort of fullback at getting forwards. But the way that we're playing at the minute, there's no sort of patient build-up play where you're letting your fullbacks overlap. We're just lumping it forwards, and then it's coming straight back at us. And our fullbacks don't really get the chance to sort of, do them overlaps and all that. It's just, and it's weird because, I'm not saying that we were playing tiki-taka, playing it out from the back before this, rut started, but these lumps forward just seem so aimless, whereas before they were concise and they were direct,
Absolutely, I think you spot on with that, and I think Lummy agreed with you on the radio. I mean, you obviously watched the match and listened to the commentary, and you could just hear in his voice sometimes and his reactions. He really wanted to, maybe not tear into, but I think he wanted to probably be a bit more strong in his criticism. I think he sort of reined it back a little bit, which I can understand, but the amount of times it was just an aimless lump forward, and I don't get what the game plan is at the moment. We seem to be sticking to that, and there's no attempt to maybe just tinker around the edges and maybe say, right, let's try and play out from the back a little bit occasionally. Farman doesn't have to kick the ball long every single time. Occasionally use the defender, and then they can bring it a bit further forward and potentially be a bit more accurate maybe with the pass out.
Well, I mean, during a game, high press will not work if the opposition defenders just lump it over your midfield. It doesn't work. It only works if their defenders are trying to play it out and you're closing them down and you're causing them problems and you're going to make them make a mistake. But if they're just going to lump it forward, it's not going to work. And Beech needs to sort of assess when it's not working. Okay, we'll stop pressing so high up. We'll let the midfielders sit back a bit and work it. And during a game, you don't just sort of stick with the same plan A. Sometimes you go from plan A to plan B, and then you get a goal, and then you go back to plan C to sort of hit them on the break a little bit. You can't just have the same game plan for the full 90 minutes, and then when it's not working, carry on with that.
You mentioned about Beech there. I've been slightly exasperated by some of his post-match comments in the last few games. I'm generally calm about post-match interviews. At the end of the day, they're speaking not long after a game. Emotions are high. It's sometimes not the best time actually to grab them, really. It would be best to almost grab them the next day when they've had a chance to think and reflect a little bit. But I mean, some of the things he said, talking about starting games well. For me, if you're starting games well, you should be making the keeper make 2 or 3 saves in that period, surely. Didn't feel like we did that in either of those games. I mean, against Morecambe, bar the goal, I can't really think of their keeper having many saves to make at all.
No.
To be honest. Against Grimsby, you talk about the second half, we put their keeper under pressure. I can only think of 2 shots on target, and that was Dickinson's header, which obviously missed with the rebound, and then Zantala's goal. And that both of them came in the 90th minute and just after.
Well, I think we had a couple of shots on target in the first half, but they were just straight at the keeper.
Yeah.
They weren't testing him in any way, shape or form. And, it's just bizarre. But you say his post-match comments, but some of his pre-match comments, I mean, before that Morecambe game, he was saying that Morecambe are a sort of similar club to us. And it's like, no, they're not,
They've got to manage it. I almost think it'd be good if actually... If someone would speak to the manager before he comes and say, whatever you do, don't start comparing us to Rochdale or to Morecambe or things like that, because it just gets the fans' backs up. Whether you think it's factually right or not, it just winds the fans up, and fans get easily wound up by it. I mean, Greg Abbott, to be fair, the clubs he used to compare to us to were a bit bigger than Morecambe.
Yeah.
I mean, comparing us to Morecambe, I know it's not exactly what he said, and I think people can be a bit facetious on these kind of things, but I think as a manager, you could just got to be careful to use that as a comparison. I mean, let's get on this other point, actually, something else that Beech did mention, COVID. He's tried to sort of shy away from it when we first came back, but it started to creep into the last few post-match interviews, hasn't it? And he let slip, I think after the Morecambe game, that over 50% of the squad has had COVID. Now, we don't know to what effect or what level they've had it. I've heard murmurs that it was worse than we really first thought. There's a danger people are going to look at it and say, you're just making excuses now. And you do wonder, should they have been a little bit more open maybe after that first initial break and said, look, it's really badly affected us this, and we maybe need to temper our expectations because it's going to be tough second half of the season. Was there maybe a little bit of cockiness and arrogance is probably the wrong word, but a little bit of, I don't know, maybe they just expected, you know what, we'll probably be fine. A few of them had it bad, but it shouldn't be too bad overall. I think we'll get through this. Maybe there should have been a bit of a tempering of expectations there. I don't know. It's a tough one because we've seen that long COVID can have quite a bad effect on people, can't it? So professional athletes, yeah, they are in better shape than most people, but that doesn't mean that they're immune to this is an issue, are they? Do you think maybe we need to be a bit more realistic in terms of this?
Well, I mean, you know, I kind of understand, you know, I mean, I'm no doctor, as you may well know, but I understand that COVID, you know, long COVID, it can make you sort of more fatigued and more tired out, but it surely doesn't stop you being able to play a 5-yard pass. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
I mean, in a sense, when you're fatigued, that's when you start making mistakes, isn't it? Which is why your top level players don't make as much mistakes because you know they've got extraordinary fitness levels at times, and that's where often the difference can be found between, you know, because they can pull a lower league team around when they're playing a cup game. That lower league team then starts making mistakes in the passes because they're tired towards the end of the game. That's when they can pick you off. Yeah, it's a tough one. I think another issue I have with it is that a couple of weeks ago, Beech was saying, well, all our stats are showing we're still running as much, we're still doing all this. So you almost say, can you have it both ways? Can you say that we're struggling a bit, but at the same time say that our levels are the same? I know he said, oh, it looks like our fitness levels are getting up to similar levels now, but that wasn't mentioned a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. We don't see the figure, so it's a tough one for us to judge, but for me, we've got to be careful to overuse that as an excuse if we didn't use it at the start. That's the way I look at it.
Definitely.
Let's get on to talk about some sort of individual performances now then, Mike. I want to start off with Rod McDonald, because he's coming for a bit of a stick since he's come back into the team. So obviously Rhys Bennett was dropped for the Morecambe game. A little bit of a surprise, although his form has petered off quite a bit since the return to action. He's been at fault for a couple of goals. He's struggling to get back into rhythm. But I want to come to his defence a little bit here, because he took a bit of time to find his rhythm at the start of the season, didn't he? He didn't... At the start, people were like, oh, he looks a bit shaky. But actually, he started to form that partnership with with Hayden. And they looked pretty good. And then he picked up that injury, didn't he? And he got dropped for the game at Crawley. And then Bennett pretty much kept his place in the team ever since at that point. Do you think people have been a bit too harsh on him, maybe? I mean, to be fair, I'll give him some credit. He set up the goal for Zanzala, the equaliser, and he picked him out. It wasn't just a case of, I'm just going to smash it slow. If you look back at it, to me, that looks like he's picked out Zanzala, picked out a player in space. He might even get a run in the team now, possibly. You never know. Do you think maybe people should have been a bit too harsh on him?
I think so. I mean, I don't think he was any... I'm not saying he was playing well by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think he was any worse than maybe 5 or 6 other players, perhaps. You know, and people sort of moan, oh, why doesn't he just play a 5-yard pass? Why does he lump it forward? But at the end of the day, that's
the tactics.
Instructions. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I think, people sometimes just want someone to blame, really, to sort of focus their frustrations at, because I don't know, it's easier to maybe accept that McDonald, who was on the fringes of this good team, isn't good enough. It's easier to comprehend that than it is that the players who were playing well are not good enough. Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, what I'd say about McDonald, he doesn't shy away from the ball. He's not one of those players who sort of doesn't want the ball. If anything, he probably takes a little bit too much time on the ball sometimes, because I think actually he's not a bad passer of the ball. Because when he knocks it long, you can see he's trying to pick someone out. You can see what he's looking for, and sometimes he puts a bit too much in it. That's the problem. Or, like I say, he just takes a little bit too long and he gets closed down and defend it, as you found the other night. Now, maybe that'll come with his match sharpness. Maybe once he gets back into a rhythm, he'll start being a bit more simpler with the way he's playing the ball and getting rid of it quicker than he has been. But, I mean, I look at it. When Hayden and Bennett lock it long, I don't think they're particularly accurate in their passes. Quite often.
No, not at all.
I think quite often. I mean, Hayden quite often slices out of play. It happens. I don't think McDonald is as bad a player as they make out. And I think if he's going to stay in the team, he'll probably hopefully get a little run in the team, and then might get back to some of the level he was at, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those ones, isn't it? We'll see how he gets on. Let's move on to Zanzala then. Our mate Ozzy. Never doubted him, did we, Mike? Always thought he was going to come good. Yeah. You know what? Fair play to the lad. He came on in that game and we looked desperate and we weren't doing much. And no, he wasn't outstanding, but he put himself about and he ran and he won bits and he won corners and he was trying to be positive. I think he deserves credit for that. And for the goal, I mean, hopefully that's going to do his confidence wonders. And what I'd say about that is, as well, he took a step back into space. He didn't just instantly run to the front post. Yeah. He saw the 3 defenders gathering at the front post and he said, take a step back here and I'm unmarked. And he did. And, nice little cute finish. And, I mean, I'd probably start him, to be honest. I mean, we'll get on to that in the preview, but I think I'd probably start him at the weekend because I think he'll be buoyant and confident from scoring the goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's weird, isn't it? I mean, because he came in and we haven't really seen much of him. And it's easy to sort of cast this opinion that he's not good enough. But imagine that we haven't seen, say, Coyote before, after this little break that we had. What would our opinion of him be? Would it be, would we sort of rate him? Or, because at the end of the day, it's like a lot of players are completely different players since this break. And, Zanzala hasn't been brilliant, but who has? And a lot of his goals for Crewe seemingly have been sort of tap-ins in and around the 6-yard box, but we need to be getting the ball into them areas for him to be able to do that. And, it's no wonder that he hasn't been scoring if we haven't been getting the ball into the 6-yard box. And one of the times when he's on the pitch and we do get the ball in the 6-yard box, he scores.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. We don't really have, other than maybe Kedwin Scott, but I suspect he's probably not quite ready to be playing regularly yet. Zanzala's probably the only player who's like that for us, who will get into the 6-yard box and get his tap-ins and things like that. The rest of our forwards are generally the players who do a lot of their good work outside of the box. And I think a lot of fans are crowing and saying, we need to get Kedwin and Scott in the team. Give him a start. I think you've got to be a bit more realistic there. he's not going to come in and be flying. He's coming from a level where he's training maybe a couple of nights a week to training with athletes basically who are playing week in, week out. And I know he's played at professional level before, but he's then dropped out, and it's a big difference to get your fitness levels back up to the same again and to show you're ready. It took Stephen Rigger a couple of months to get ready to play first team football for us, didn't he, when he came from Penrith?
Yeah, exactly. So, and there's no reserve games either to sort of help him along with that at the minute. So
yeah, and that's another way where you look at with McDonald as well. That's probably why he struggled, because he hasn't had a chance to play in reserve games and keep his fitness up. But yeah, I think I'd be tempted to play him at the weekend, but we'll talk about that in the preview section. Amari Patrick, just a bit of a drop off in form for him, isn't it? It's a bit of a shame, because when you go back to that Walsall game where he scored the winner, I mean, he was outstanding in that match, and in the few games before it as well, he was tearing teams apart, and he was looking, like a really exciting player who looked like he could play at a higher level. Last few games, I'm not saying he's suddenly become an awful player, but he just looks like he's lacking a little bit of confidence. He's not being positive with the ball when he gets it. He's not running at players as much. He's looking for a backward pass quite often or coming inside. The few times he does, though, he's terrifying defenders. I think in the last couple of games, he's done 2 outrageous pieces of skill. Left defenders for dead.
He sent one of the Grimsby players for a hot dog, didn't he, at the end of the first half?
Yeah, he did. And it's one of those ones, you just want to see him do it a little bit more often and just be positive. But then maybe, are we not getting him into the right areas? Are we not getting players around him to support him and mean that he's able to, overlap or play 1-2s? Maybe that's where the problem is. And I do wonder if maybe a little rest out of the team and maybe start using him again as an impact sub towards the end of the games might be the best option at the moment. Yeah,
potentially. I mean, that's sort of how he won his place in the starting 11, wasn't it? By being an impact sub and doing really well and then getting these games. But none of the other forward players, I'd say, are sort of really stamping the foot down for a place in the team, are they? It's as good as anyone's guess as to who the front three is going to be.
It's weird, that, isn't it? Because you think you go back a short while and they picked themselves, didn't they, really? Yeah. Coyote on the right, Patrick on the left, and Alessandro down the middle. And we're just not able to find a mix that works quite at the moment. I mean, I think Toure did all right in the couple of games he came in, but he's back out the team now again. And I heard a lot of people say, he doesn't do enough. I think he does. I think that my problem with Toure is he does too much tracking back, because people might have a sort of stereotypical look as a winger of his, the kind of player he is. Very flair player. He's not going to get back and do the hard yards, but he does. He gets back in defence and he tries to win the ball back. And sometimes you think, stay up the pitch, be ready to receive the ball. That's what you'd like to see.
But like I say as well, because the fullbacks aren't quite able to overlap, that sometimes, occupies a defender's mind when the fullback, the opposing fullback has done an overlap, and then Toure would be able to sort of cut inside because they'd think that he's going to play that pass to the fullback, and just nothing has been clicking for anyone really, has it?
Yeah. Well, let's sort of end this bit on a couple of positives from the 2 games, and a couple of young lads, I think, actually. Jack Armour particularly, got to focus on him. Came back into the team against Grimsby, and I thought he had a really good game, and once again he showed his ability on the ball and his ability to, even when he played right back, cut inside and pick out a pass is there to see, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was even thinking before, I know that it was a makeshift back four that we had when Armour was right back and we had Bennett and Hayden at centre back and Anderson left back, but we got results. Like, why not give that a go? And because them passes from Armour at right back are just absolutely a class above, and the sitter that Dickinson missed, that stemmed from one of his balls into the box. But how Dickinson missed that sitter, I mean...
I feel for him a little bit, because you know what? He did brilliantly to win the header. To get in there and actually do something that none of the other forwards had bothered doing for most of the match. To actually get into the box and actually win a header. And it does come at him a little bit quick, and I think he just panics a little bit, didn't he? And he thought, I've just got to hit this quickly as hard as I can. And actually, when you watch it back, he probably had time to take a touch and place it. It's so frustrating, but it's one of those ones, I think, 9 times out of 10, he buries that in the back of the net and it's a goal. And just that one occasion where he just snatches it at it and fires it high and wide, and not very handsome, as good old Derek Lacey used to say. Let's pick out another young lad then. I've got to mention Taylor Charters. He came in for his second start in this game. I thought he looked okay and fairly tidy when he was on the ball, but one good crossing in the first half. He maybe just wasn't as involved as you'd hope. That was the only issue I'd pick out. Maybe he was a little bit quiet at times, but when he was involved, he looked lively. He had one burst into the box in the second half as well, where he looked like he might create something. And how do you think he did?
Well, I think he did all right, but I think his problem is just maybe a little bit too eager sometimes. I think he looks for the sort of the assist rather than just a pass. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes his movement is he's looking to maybe sort of, run into the box and cause them problems rather than maybe just sort of be an option for a more simple pass. Yeah,
it's one of the ones, isn't it? I think he's better on the ball than Mellish, definitely. He's probably not quite as physical. He's not going to, bully players as much as Mellish does. He's probably not going to get into goal-scoring positions in the same way that Mellish does. But he offers a little bit more on the ball, and I think maybe at the moment that's what we need. And my inclination would be, don't drop him for the Bradford game, because I'm not sure what good it's going to do a young lad like that to put him in the team for one game and then drop him again. But I suppose the way Beech is going to look at it is I need to get results, really, and that's the be and end all for him at the end of the day right now. So there you go. I think that pretty much covers the review stuff, Mike. We're just going to depress ourselves if we keep talking further. In fact, no, actually, before we finish, let's have a quick shout out to the Morecambe commentary guys. Got to give them a shout out, haven't we? Absolutely outstanding that was. I think because Morecambe being in Lancashire, and there's so many clubs there. Radio Lancashire don't necessarily have a sort of full time commentating for 90 minutes guy, do they? So Morecambe themselves have a couple of volunteers who do the commentary for their iFollow stuff, and it was 90 minutes of hilarity, wasn't it, really? And they were getting Carlisle fans involved. It's basically like MasterChef, wasn't it? Because they were just talking about what people were eating and what people were drinking and how they were getting on and stuff. And my favourite bit, though, was when they gave a shout-out to someone's cat and the commentator meows on there. It was incredible.
That did make that sort of depressing game sort of actually more enjoyable. They were proper little double act, weren't they? Because it took me a while to realise that they're not like a BBC commentary team. And because I was thinking, imagine if you're just listening to this, you're not watching it, you wouldn't have a clue what was going on in the match.
You know what? My better half, Megan, she was listening to the game. Well, she's basically, quite often when I put the game on, after about 5 minutes, she's like, I'm bored of this, and she goes upstairs or goes off and reads a book or something like that, goes and makes some food. On this occasion, she sat for pretty much the whole game and listened, because she's like, this is incredible. It's like Charlie FM on steroids. It was like, never been anything like it, but there you go. So fair play to the Morecambe guys. Made a pretty dreadful afternoon for Carlisle fans a little bit more entertaining at the very least, didn't it?
There is one thing that we didn't mention as well, and that is the corner that Grimsby scored. And I did not see a lot wrong with that. It wasn't on the highlights, but I think we got out of jail there.
I think it was a foul, to be honest. I think the player comes across with his arm across Farman. It's one of those ones that's difficult for the attacker to avoid because he's going for the header. But for me, any referee is going to give that as a foul, in my opinion, just the way it is. And let's give a quick shout out to that short free kick that they took from where the keeper picked up the ball against Morecambe. Just like, I can't even begin to describe that. That just sums up basically our second half of the season. It was just absolutely god awful, and also, please, can we stop taking those free kicks? When we got a direct free kick outside the box and we're laying it off, stop it. Just hit the thing. Just have a go at goal, because I don't think I've seen one of those come off, bar the one Anderton scored against Stevenage, I think it was, where the keeper just messed it up and spawned it into the back of the net. That's not going to happen every game. Once a season you'll get that. Just have a go at goal. So there you go. Anyway, that's the preview stuff. Before we get any more angry again, let's leave that bit. Mike, we'll go for a short break, and then we'll be back to look ahead to the games against Bradford and Mansfield Town. So we'll be back in just a minute.
Hi, this is George Tanner. You are listening to the Brunton Bugle.
Cheers, George, there for his little bit in the break. So let's get straight into the preview stuff, Mike. And as usual, as we've been doing regularly for the last few episodes, we've managed to get an opposition pod on to discuss their club and how they're getting on this season. This time, we've spoken to the guys from the Mansfield Matters podcast. It was Craig took out some time to speak to me about how things have been getting on at Field Mill this season, and this is the chat now. Craig, how's it going?
Yeah, very good, thank you, Lee. How's everything up in Carlisle?
Funny enough, I actually live down in Liverpool, so it's a bit different for me. But in terms of how things are going at Carlisle, not particularly great at this point in the season. It's all unravelling very, very quickly. But let's get on to Mansfield Town. Let's talk about them. Your season's been one that's a bit up, mostly downs, but a few ups in there as well. I mean, how are you feeling about how your season's gone?
I think I'll use the same term. I'll say unravelling quite quickly. It's been quite a strange season, to be honest. I think nobody could have predicted the start that Mansfield had with the 11 games without a win under Graham Coughlin. We've been guilty in previous seasons, and previous managers have given them a little bit too much time and seeing things collapse. So the owners and the new sort of CEO and director of football, as he was at the time, David Sharp, moved quite quickly to sort that out, bringing in Nigel Clough, who was a free agent. Hit a great run of form. It really started to sort of pick up a little bit, and for quite a while it looked, that we might put on a bit of a charge, but then we were hit with enforced sort of winter break, if you like, not being able to play because of frozen pitches and what have you. A bit of a disastrous January transfer window, which I think certainly us from the Mansfield Matters podcast, we understand why the transfer window was like it was, but a lot of supporters, when you're on such a good run, can sort of, just sort of sit on the coattails of being on such a high, so aren't quite as happy with it. And I think prior to last Tuesday night when we beat league leaders Cheltenham 3-1, we were in really, really poor form, and I think for a lot of us now it's just sort of taking it one game at a time and seeing how it unravels. A lot of us have got our eye on the summer, to be fair. It's been a crazy journey.
Yeah, we'll touch on Clough in a minute, but I forgot to ask you about Coughlin, because when we did a preview episode in the summer, I did say it was one of the oddest appointments I've seen in recent years at League Two clubs, because he'd not exactly set the world on fire at Bristol Rovers. He didn't seem to have any particular connection to Mansfield Town, and you went and sort of effectively poached him from them, didn't you? And it just did not work at all. His record, was it 4 wins in 27 games? Something like that. Yeah. He's pretty appalling.
It was. To be honest, when we appointed him, we all said on our podcast we backed him obviously, but we all sort of questioned it a little bit. We'd gone from having a manager in David Flitcroft who'd got us to the playoffs. We missed out on automatic promotion on the final day of the season. We all thought he'd get a little bit more time. We replaced him with the unknown academy manager John Dempster, who'd done great things behind the scenes at the club and was a great player for us, but had no senior management experience, and it wasn't quite working for him. So we understood the reasoning behind his departure. But when Graham Coughlin was appointed, we all sort of looked at each other and questioned it, because similar to John Dempster, he was a rookie manager. We understood that a lot of the reasoning for Coughlin coming was that he wanted to move close to home. He was based in Sheffield and commuting to Bristol a lot. But again, it just didn't quite work. There was a massive hangover at the club and a big overturn of players in the summer, and for whatever reason it just didn't start well. And I think it was an accident waiting to happen, really. And I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, and I'm sure the owners would sort of put their hands up a little bit and say if they could go back in time, they perhaps would have taken the time over that appointment, because again it was a very rushed one and not one which in hindsight was as methodical as it should have been. We had a real opportunity then to maybe put a caretaker in charge for a few games, have a little look at what else was out there, and it was a very, very strange situation.
Must be happy with the appointment of Clough, though, someone of that experience. We said when he got the job, because he got it, I think, not long before we played you, actually, that he really stood out as a bit of a statement, as if you were saying, obviously, this season's going to be a difficult one to get anything out of, but in terms of the future, it felt like, wow, that's a really good appointment for Mansfield Town. How's he doing so far?
He's doing quite well. I think a lot of people are sort of questioning the run that we're on at the minute because of how well we started. However, the January transfer window, as I alluded to, we lost two of our arguably biggest earners in Andy Cook and Nicky Maynard to League Two rivals. Didn't really replace them with the targets that Clough wanted, and that sort of raised a lot of eyebrows. But in terms of what the job he came in to do, like I've said before, a lot of people can get swept up in results and sort of thinking about how quickly you can progress. day one when Clough came in, he said, this season's about stability and building again in the summer. He said it might take 2 or 3 transfer windows to sort out, and we fully believe that, and we fully back that. In terms of his appointment, it's the best appointment we could have had. I think it was the first time ever as a Mansfield fan where we could actually sit and go, at the moment, at the particular time, there were maybe 6 or 7 top quality candidates out there who were all free agents for whatever reason, and we took our time on the appointment. We sort of thought it through a little bit, but when you look at what Clough did at Burton, spent many years building them up with absolutely no budget whatsoever, with his hands tied behind his back at times, got them into the Football League, a tremendous clear out at Derby and stabilised them at a time where they needed stabilising. Again at Sheffield United, doing the same thing, and sort of maybe even laying the start of the foundations for the journey they're on now. Then again at Burton, taking them up to the Championship and putting them in good stead. And if you look at the reason he left Burton, because of the pandemic, trying to save the club money, that says everything you want in a manager in terms of loyalty and caring about others. And I think when you look at what he says, he doesn't want to spend money willy-nilly. He wants to spend it like it's his own and think methodically about things. That's exactly what Mansfield need, and we need a little bit of calm, a little bit of patience, and that's exactly what he brings to the club. And I think next season we'll certainly be competing up there, and if not next season, then certainly the season after we'll certainly see Mansfield Town sort of vying for League One.
Yeah, what's your expectations as a Mansfield fan? Mansfield always strike me as a club. They're a proper Football League club, aren't they? You get these little non-league upstarts coming into the league over the last few years, don't you? But Mansfield Town, a bit like Carlisle, a bit like I suppose in the past you'd say teams like Doncaster Rovers, they just feel like a Football League club. What are your hopes and ambitions for the future for the club?
League One stability at some point has got to be there. You look at our training facility, the RH Academy, which we've plunged money into over the last 5-6 years or so, and it's one of the best facilities in League Two, perhaps even League One, pushing Championship standard. We've got the infrastructure which is there. We have been milling about League Two for a long, long time. We've been on a good journey. We were absolutely nowhere in the conference. We were probably days away from going extinct before John Radford purchased the club, and we've been on a upward journey ever since. We sort of came close under Steve Evans, came close under David Flitcroft, and for whatever reason it's taken a bit of a step back. I certainly think in 5 years' time we'll be a stable League One club. I think what a lot of Mansfield fans don't do, I think it's because of our recent history in terms of being up there, is they don't see the bigger picture sometimes. And I think you do have to take a step back. You do have to have a little think about where you've come from and where you want to be. We were in a right mess at the start of this season in terms of our results and the way we were playing. It had to be about stability. We had players who were on ridiculous wages, considering that we're in the midst of a pandemic still, had no income coming from fans and that sort of thing. So we've had to tighten our belts and think like that. So I think in terms of the immediate expectations, it's just get that safety, keep that the buffer between ourselves and the bottom two, and survive, and then go again in the summer and all enjoy the journey in the sofa. Nobody wants to get promotion and watch from the sofa, do they? They all want to be in the stand celebrating. So exactly. let's go for next season. Let's write this one off and let's go for next season. Just survive and build from there, because we've done excellent work over the last 10 seasons to get where we are. We've taken a couple of hits, a couple of knocks, but as I always say, if you get knocked down 7 times, you stand up 8 times.
Yeah, exactly that. To be honest, I think that's the attitude we're taking of writing off a season as the way things are going right now. Got to ask you about Andy Clough. Obviously, you mentioned there he's gone out on loan to Bradford City. Now, he started out in our youth academy, actually came up through them. How did he get on with you guys?
I love Andy Clough. I think he's a real asset. I'm actually disappointed that we let him go, but I understand why. Huge wages for where we are. Like I say, all those circumstances. It's a huge wage apparently, so I can understand that. We call him half a season Andy Cook because he'd been with us 2 seasons, and yet halfway through last season he was shipped out to the league above to Tranmere with a view to a permanent move. For whatever reason that didn't transpire, so he came back in the summer, hit the ground running, and was a real asset for us. Nigel Clough came in. He didn't start as many games because Jordan Bowery was absolutely on fire and doing really, really well. He has to go out and play some senior football, and he's doing that, getting the starts for Bradford, scoring the goals, which is disappointing to see sometimes, especially in recent weeks when we've been desperately short of a striker. But the long-term thing, I understand it. I mean, if I could go back, I think even if Nigel Clough could go back, I think he would probably keep him around. But unhappy players don't make for a happy dressing room, and I think you have to take that into consideration as well. I'd love to see Cook get another shot at being a Mansfield player next season, if only to see where we ship him off to next January, but it won't happen.
He might even finally return to Carlisle, you never know, but he's an unusual one. He never actually made a first team appearance for us, unfortunately, for various reasons. He came through around about the same time as Gary Medine, actually. We had a real run of strikers coming through, scored. I think Ryan Bowman actually came through the season after as well. But again, he barely played for our first team. So a strange one, that. Who are the danger men we need to watch out for then?
Well, I think Mansfield, we're a very in-between team. Jordan Bowery's in good form on his day when he gets the service. He's just moved into double figures for this season. I'd say Stephen Quinn at the moment. He's been good since he's came in on loan from Burton in January. But we've actually got an emerging youngster called Jason Law. I say youngster, he's 21. He's been at the club 6 years under 6 different managers, and only now is he getting his first look in. He started the last 3 or 4 games or so in a number of different positions, and he's absolutely on fire at the moment. He played just behind the front 2 against Cheltenham the other week. Had an absolutely storming game, got 2 assists. The only thing he's missing from his game at the moment is a goal. I think that will come in time. He's a real good starlet for us. So I'd say Jason Law, definitely Stephen Quinn, and then when he turns up, when he's on his game, Kel Gordon at right back is a real force down that right hand side, and we've got George Lapsley to come back in as well, and he was in really good form before he got a bit of an injury 4 or 5 weeks ago.
I was impressed with Lapsley when you played up at our place, actually, because I actually went to that game, because it's one of the games where fans were allowed. So
yeah, can we not talk about that? I mean, watching from the sofa as fans are in the stand cheering, that was very hard to do. We've had 2 games like that. We had the game with you guys, and then we had Cambridge a couple of months before. Very strange month that in football.
We've been incredibly lucky at Carlisle that we've had, I think, 5 games this season we've been able to actually go to.
That's unthinkable. It really is.
It's absolutely mad, and it just you really do miss it, don't you?
Yeah.
In terms of predictions, how do you think it's going to go?
Well, it's a tough one to call because, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago I'd have said it'd be a really tough game because Carlisle were flying, we were flying. You guys seem to have absolutely dropped off at the moment. I don't know what's happening with you guys at the minute. I mean, you were sort of odds on to go up. I thought you'd do well. Can I just ask, is David Holdsworth still involved? Is he still director of football, or is he left yet?
He still is director of football.
Right, well, that's why you're faltering then, isn't he? The worst manager we've ever had. Probably got a revolving door fitted. He signed like 150-odd players during his time with us.
Hang on a second. You say he's the worst manager you've ever had. Have you not read his Wikipedia profile?
Oh, he's the best. He's the best manager that's ever existed on the planet in his own
you
head.
lot as well. It's a good. Makes you very suspicious as to who's edited it. Let's just leave it at that.
I've got a strong suspicion that it's him, a member of himself, that has edited that. But
I couldn't possibly comment on that.
No, it'd be a tough game, to be fair. I think you guys will find your feet eventually again. If we cut out the silly mistakes which we've made, we will be tough to break down. And if we play with a little bit of flair up front, we'll grab a couple of goals. But it just depends which Mansfield Town side turn up, because it could be the Mansfield Town side that turned up against Cheltenham and put in a really good performance, or it could be the Stag side that turned up against Barrow and basically didn't get off the bus. So who knows? Let's flip a coin and decide it that way. I think that might be the best way to end this season.
Thanks for speaking to us, mate. Really appreciate that. And good luck for the rest of the season, but not particularly next Tuesday, because we badly need to get a win as soon as possible.
Yeah, as long as I'll tell you what, let's take a draw and then we'll go from there.
Well, if we beat Bradford at the weekend, I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll take that as well if we draw at the weekend as well. Thanks very much for having me, Liam. Much appreciated.
No problem. So there you have it. There was the chat there with Craig from Mansfield Matters podcast. Thanks again to him for giving up his time. Mike, you had a little listen as well, didn't you? He was interesting chat, wasn't it? Particularly the crack about Holdsworth.
Yeah, it was because I remember when he joined us, the sort of article on the official club website. I mean, people sort of keep in the loop with the likes of Gretna and all the rest of it, and people were asking questions, shall we say, of his CV a little bit. But no, it's. I mean, Holdsworth was very eager, wasn't he, to sort of be, I've helped bring these players in, all this and that and the other, and he seemed to have gone quiet a little bit the past few weeks.
Remarkable, that, isn't it? How quiet people go. Can blow their own trumpet when things are going well, can't they? But there you go. Well, let's look ahead to the games then. Before we go on to the Mansfield one, let's look at sort of the Bradford one, Mike. I think if you'd gone back to when we beat them back in December, 1-0 with that Reece Bennett goal, and you come ahead to now, to this game, I don't think you would have expected Bradford to have been ahead of us in the table, would you?
No, you really wouldn't. I mean, they've turned it round quite well, to be honest, because they really were down in the doldrums. I mean, obviously they have played, I think, 2 more games than us.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, but they were in relegation trouble when we beat them. They were really right down the bottom. I mean, Stuart McCall was still in charge then, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah,
I see Jim, and I can't remember if he got sacked after that game or not long after. But I mean, the writing was on the wall at that point, wasn't it? Because I mean, they were absolutely dire that afternoon. I mean, we only won 1-0, but I think Amari Patrick could have had 4 or 5 goals himself on another day if luck had gone his way. So it's one of those ones, isn't it? I mean, it's going to be a tough match, this one, isn't it? When you look at it and the form they're in. I mean, they did lose the other night against Newport County 2-1, thanks to a 96-minute penalty. But bar that, when you look at their form, I mean, they came back to draw against Bolton, who really are the form team in the division right now. And prior to that, they were on a winning streak, weren't they? So it's not going to be an easy game, is it?
No, I mean, I'm not optimistic, to be honest. I think, like I say, that Grimsby game, if we can't beat a team like that, there isn't a lot of hope for us against a team like Bradford, who are doing very well right now.
Got to talk about their 2 managers. I mean, they were put in caretaker charge, the 2 youth team managers, Mark Truman and Connor Sellers. The turnaround in fortunes from them has been remarkable for their first senior role. And when you look at their CVs as players, they've not played at any sort of level, really. I think Truman's mostly been around the non-league circuit. I think Sellers had a brief spell playing in the Football League, but was mostly played, I think, sort of in Iceland and Finland, I think, and places like that. And then, again, done the non-league circuit around Yorkshire way. To do the job they've done, and originally they were caretakers, then they were told, until we decide who the permanent manager is going to be. And now they've been given a contract until the end of next season. It's quite a fair-child story, isn't it? 2 of the youngest managers in the league as well.
Yeah, it really is. And, I honestly think that they could well be within a shout of the playoffs, which a few weeks ago was completely ludicrous,
I think that they look at the game against us, and if we beat them, that might put a bit of a dent in it for them, because we would then go ahead of them on goal difference, wouldn't we, if we beat them at the weekend. So that's probably one to look at. I think get 3 points here, then we're really in contention, because we basically probably put a very strong dent in our chances of getting up there. It's one of those ones, isn't it? They've done a remarkable job as caretakers, but it's all gone swimmingly for them so far. And you do wonder, if things start to go wrong with an experienced pair like that as managers, will players then start to turn and start to say, you've never played the game and that kind of thing? Because I think Lummy's hinted at this kind of thing before, hasn't he, when he's discussed it. You do wonder, it's a bit of a risk. Maybe giving them a deal to the end of the season might have been a better option for them. But it shows faith, I suppose. That's one way of looking at it, I guess. And I do wonder, you've seen it with Beech. When you get into a bad run, it can be difficult to get out of it, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, the whole joint manager thing, to be honest. I mean, you don't really see it much at the highest level. I mean, them 2 fellas at Lincoln did quite well. And
I think in the end, Danny was the senior, though, wasn't he? I think in non-league level, they were joint managers. But then once they went to senior level, I think Danny became the senior one. And I think as well at Grimsby, wasn't it Paul Hurst and his assistant, when they were in non-league, they were joint managers as well, possibly?
Yeah, I think when Salford worked the way up through non-league, they had a joint manager thing as well, didn't they? But I think like you say, I think when it's going well, it's good. But then when it doesn't go well, they probably have arguments with each other, don't they, about what to do to sort of change it and all the rest of it, and these things sort of fall apart. But no, I mean, they're doing very well right now. But it's interesting you say about the level that they're played and sort of the authority that you have over players when you haven't sort of played at that high level. Because generally speaking in football, a lot of the best managers weren't the best players.
No, it's true. It's very true, to be fair. Yeah. they've made some good signings in January, haven't they? When you look at their squad, in particular, I mean, you look at their attacking options. They're a little bit spoiled for choice, aren't they? I mean, I'm just looking down through the list now. I mean, you've got Ollie Crankshaw from Wigan. Now, I heard some murmurs that we were actually after Crankshaw back in at the start of the season, but Wigan were actually picking him for a while, and then obviously didn't happen in January. Billy Clark, I mean, I'm not sure how close he is to sort of playing as much at the moment. Lee Novak, I think we quite happily have Lee Novak based on his past experience. I mean, Clayton Donaldson's 37 now, but he knows this level like not many players would. Andy Cook, obviously ex-United youth product, who was mentioned in the chat there with the Mansfield fan.
Novak and Cook are both big lads as well, aren't they?
Yeah, and Danny Rowe, he's a big lad as well. I mean, they've got a lad on loan from Middlesbrough, Ruman Burrell as well. I'm guessing he must be a decent prospect. He's coming from Middlesbrough's academy. Plenty of choices up there, isn't there? I mean, Charles Vernham as well. I mean, he's down as a midfielder, but he's more of a winger, I think.
Yes, so, they've got these sort of big forward lads, and it seems as well like Elliot Watt has sort of been quite vital to them in this sort of recent turnaround of form. And, you got a good set-piece taker like that and big lads in the penalty area. I'm not looking forward to this one, personally.
I think as well they made a good defensive recruitment in January in Niall Canavan from Plymouth Argyle. He also got promoted from this division quite recently as well. And by all accounts, he's made a big difference to their back four. Because I think, remember that game when we played down there? I think Ben Richards-Everton played in that game, didn't he? He was an ex-United youth product. And he was atrocious that day. He looked like his head was anywhere else but playing for Bradford City, didn't he? And by all accounts, he just wasn't settled, and he ended up leaving, I think, not long after that. But yeah, I mean, you look at the players they've got available. I think Billy Clark did actually start the last game, but they've got Charles Vernham coming off the bench, and he was brilliant at Grimsby last season. And Crankshaw's starting games. Andy Cook started that last game. They're leaving Callum Cook on the bench, and I picked him out as one of their key men, danger man, and they left him on the bench for the last game. It worries me. I don't know. I'm hoping their confidence has been dented a little bit by that late winner for Newport in the game in midweek, which was played at Cardiff City Stadium, by the way, because obviously Newport have been given permission to play their games for the next couple of games there, haven't they? I think so. Yeah,
which I think is silly, but
there you go. What can you do with that? So that should be a tough test. Before we move on, actually interesting to note that the referee for this game, Ollie Yates, he last took charge of United for the trip to Hayes and Yedding in the FA Cup earlier this season, and one of the assistants is Joe Simpson. And if you think that name's familiar, that's because it's Paul Simpson's son. So there you go. The Mansfield game, interesting. When we did the sort of half-season review, we all picked out Mansfield as a team to watch out for and a team that could challenge for the playoffs. Not quite gone that way, has it, in the end, really? They've had a sort of real... Having got up to about mid-table, they sort of proper drop back down again, haven't they? And they find themselves now probably not in danger of relegation, but potentially if they don't start picking up a couple of wins here and there, could be dragged back into it, couldn't they?
Yeah, but I think, like the lad you interviewed was saying, I think they're more sort of looking forward to next season, and it's about sort of building on what they have this season. But yeah, they started so well under Clough, and then they've stagnated. No.
Oh dear.
But thank you. Yeah, but it seems bizarre, the whole sort of Andy Cook to Bradford thing. I don't know what exactly the reasons were behind that, but
the suggestion seems to be that he's just too big a wage, isn't it? And they just needed to get him off the books. And Bradford seem to be throwing a little bit of money at it, which they seem to do a lot. It's an interesting one.
Mansfield have as well, sort of over recent years, haven't they? They've sort of always had one of the bigger budgets in I wonder if this league.
They're reining it back in for a while. Fans aren't allowed in. Ready to have another go at it in the summer. I do wonder if Clough's been told, keep us up this year, and then we're going to have to strip the squad back a bit in January just to keep things tight. And then once we're allowed to get fans back in next season, we can put a bit of money in. Then you'll have a bit of backing, and you can start bringing. I mean, you brought Stephen Quinn in from Burton, and he's a player who's played in the Premier League for Hull, hasn't he? He played for the Republic of Ireland God knows how many times, and that to me stands out as a decent sign. A kind of player with a bit of an experienced head who can help them through this tough patch, can't he?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We said there, expect a big rebuild for them this season. In the summer, sorry, and don't expect them. Well, don't be surprised if they're up near the top next summer, I think. And danger men are picked. I mean, Mark Stech, always been a good goalkeeper at this level, hasn't he? I think.
Yeah,
he's one who does well for them. George Lapsley, I was impressed with him actually for the game up at Brunton Park. I think he nearly scored a spectacular volley, didn't he? Where he just took a touch and almost smashed it over Paul Fallon's head. I mentioned Stephen Quinn then. I think Jordan Bowery as well. He's one of those players, isn't he? He's always looked like he's got ability to play at a higher level, but never quite done enough, has he, to kick on and get that big move.
They've also got the other Joe Riley, who
they have indeed, yeah.
When we signed our Joe Riley, I thought, oh yeah, he's sort of like a decent League Two defender. You know,
that wasn't
it was
him.
the wrong one.
I mean, what I'd say, if you look defensively, they didn't look the strongest when we played against them, and I don't think they are particularly strong. When I look at the squad now, there's not that many defenders in there. So potentially, if we can get at them early, maybe we can do something this game. But I mean, got to give them credit. They beat the league leaders 3-1 in midweek this week. So
exactly.
that suggests to me, you know, if they can pick the form up again, that's going to be a tough game for us, especially away from home as well.
But at the same time, you know, while they did beat Cheltenham, you know, they lost 2-0 against Barrow like the other night.
Yeah.
And I think they're very much hit and miss right now, and hopefully we'll catch them on one of their miss games.
It's worth knowing as well, they I know they won 3-1 the other night, but actually if you look in the 5 games before that, they only managed to score 1 goal, and that was in the 1-0 win over Morecambe. All the other games they've played in, they've lost to 0 recently. So it does show you that goals maybe are coming a bit difficult to come by. Maybe Cheltenham just had a bit of a meltdown in that game. I don't know, because obviously I haven't seen the highlights. There you go. Let's move on to a bit of team news then, Mike. The 3 ones we've mentioned previously, Danny Devine with his knee, Morgan Feeney with his foot, and Jamie Armstrong with his ankle, all still look like they're going to miss out. Josh Coyote, not 100% sure, are we, on that one? Missed the game against Grimsby. Beech seemed to think it's not going to be a long-term thing, but he didn't sound that confident to me about him playing in this match, so maybe he'll miss out. George Tanner, though, sounds like he just maybe was rested for that game. Maybe he'll come back in, maybe just on the bench, possibly. Have to wait and see with that one. Other than that, it doesn't sound like anyone else is going to miss out, does it? It sounds like Hayden might come back as well, because he obviously limped off against Grimsby, but maybe he'll be ready for this one.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I think Beech is understandably keeping his cards relatively close to his chest with these sorts of things, and I think there is a few players who may well be playing and they've got little niggles as well. It's just such a tough run of fixtures right now. Yeah.
Well, he made 5 changes, didn't he, for the game against Grimsby? I think did he make 3 against Morecambe as well? So he's making a lot of changes. I've suddenly become a little bit of a tinker man, and he has admitted maybe to keep the squad fresh, he's going to have to do this before the end of the season. If you were going to sort of pick a team for this game against Bradford, you're going to make any changes or anything, what would you do? Would you make any tweaks? Would you change formation? What would you try?
I mean, the formation wasn't an issue at the start of the season, and teams are sort of finding us out now, and I wouldn't begrudge us going 3 at the back, and sort of, like you said before, maybe Riley would make a good wing back. Just maybe something different. Just show that you've got something else up your sleeve, and by all means change tactics in a game. Maybe even, we mentioned before playing Furman and Guy in the same team. Maybe we play them 2 sitting and play sort of Riley in like a number 10 role behind the striker. I think he could cause a lot of problems there.
He's a busy player, isn't he, Riley? And he gets about, and he's having to do a lot of busy play as a sort of defensive player almost. I wonder if you play him in that number 10 role, because he can pick a pass. He's a clever player. He's an intricate player. But also, if he's harrying 2 centre backs as well, we could have some positive impact there, couldn't we?
Exactly, yeah, and it's just something different. I'm not asking him to, change everything. Just change something, because what we have right now just isn't working.
I do wonder that idea of the 3 at the back. I'm quite positive about the idea of that as well. I mean, what you could do, you could have Armour playing as your right wing back. You could have your three centre backs of, presuming Hayden's fit, Hayden, Bennett, and McDonald could play in there. Or if Hayden's not fit, then you could always put Anderton in as one of those centre backs. And I'd be tempted to try Brennan Dickinson as a left wing back, because he's played that most of his career. He's never played in a front three until Beech has brought him in, and I know it's worked with in terms of moving Mellish into a new position, but I've not quite seen it yet with Dickinson. And some of his best bits have actually come when he's picked the ball up in our half and had a run at players and taken on a couple of players, and he looks like he's got ability to do that. I know Beech wants to get him in and around the box because of his ability to hit a ball and have a go at goal, and he showed that against Colchester. But I do wonder, maybe playing him as a wing back and getting him up and down the pitch might be the best way to use him at the moment.
Or even just a simple old 4-4-2, and then just a left midfielder and a 4-4-2, and two up front. Just something different, for crying out loud. Even the current system and personnel that he has been playing, but keep it on the deck a little bit more. It's not rocket science to just tweak it a little bit.
No, absolutely not. Okay, then let's get on to the predictions then, Mike. Come on.
Right, well, I'm not confident, and I'm going to go a 1-0 defeat against Bradford.
Ooh.
I know, and I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw against Mansfield.
Basically, you're saying our season's over.
Basically,
yeah. Well, you know what? I think there needs to be a bit of yin and yang in there, doesn't there? And I think I'm going to give the balance here, because I did predict defeat last weekend, and I was right. I don't think I got the score right, but I predicted the defeat correctly. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw against Bradford. You didn't say you think was going to score in the games. So you went, was it 0-1? 1-0 obviously to Bradford, and a draw. Did you think were you going to go for a score draw? Or?
Yeah, a 1-1 draw against Mansfield, and I reckon Zanzala is going to score again.
Okay, well, there you go. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw against Bradford City. I think Zanzala will score. I think Zanzala will score the goal. I think Andy Cook will score the goal for them. It's inevitable. I think he's finally going to get his goal against us. I think he's only played like 2-3 times against us, hasn't he? And then we're going to go to Mansfield. You know what? We're going to get a 2-1 win. We're going to scab it. Properly scab it. I think Dickinson will score a goal. Probably a free kick or something. And then the other goal will be... why not? Zanzala again. Three goals in 3 games. I think his head will be in the clouds, and he'll be scoring goals for fun.
And he'll lift us back into the promotion contention by the end of the season.
You know what? The 4 points from the next 2 games would not be a bad result, especially Bradford as well. Getting at least a point against them at least stops them pulling away. And then Mansfield's one of the first games in hand we play. That's the other key thing we've got to remember. That's the first time we play a game in hand. So that's a real chance for us to actually drag ourselves back into a bit of a mix, doesn't it, I suppose? So there you go. So there's our predictions for the next couple of games. Hopefully I'll be right again. This time, obviously, we didn't get the 4-0 win over Grimsby. I did, get the defeat right, didn't I? But there you go. Okay, let's look at the extras then, Mike. What former CFC players and coaches have been getting up to across the world. Goals. I keep leaving it to last, but let's just get him out of the way straight away. Charlie White scored 2 goals again this week. No surprise there, is there?
Yeah, no surprise whatsoever. And my mate who's a Rochdale fan says that he always scores against Rochdale as well. So
there you go. Here's one that you don't hear that often. Tom Anderson. He scored for Doncaster Rovers. He was on loan from Burnley, I think, in the 14-15 season? I think Curle's first season in charge.
Yeah, I think so.
He looked decent, actually, I think, in those 8 games he played, and then went back to Burnley. Cole Stockton scored twice. Obviously scored against us, and then he scored in midweek against Forest Green Rovers. He's hitting a real good run of form. I think he's close to double figures now for the season. Here's a surprise brace that we didn't expect to be saying this season. Pat Bruff scored twice for Barrow in their win against Mansfield, wasn't it, I think? So, yeah, fair play to him there. Another name that we haven't heard for a long time, Angelo Balanta, scored twice for Dagenham and Redbridge. I think he joined them just before Christmas, didn't he? I seem to remember we mentioned him then. Jerry Yates back in the scoring run for Blackpool. He scored, and Mac Beck scored his 2nd goal of the season for Harrogate. So well done to them. Bit of transfer news. Mark Ellis, he's left Tranmere Rovers. He's gone on loan to Notts County till the end of the season. He's not been in their matchday squad for a while though, has he? I don't think Keith Hill particularly rated him, so I think he's just gone out to get some games, I guess. And Notts County up there in the National League. Mike is our National League expert, are they?
I think they are in and around the playoffs, yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. I think he'll be getting coached by Greg Abbott there, won't he? Because I think he's assistant, isn't he? Under Neil Ardley. So, yeah, be interesting to see how he gets on. And speaking of coaches, it was rumoured during the week, wasn't it? But it was finally confirmed. Keith Curl has been appointed as the Oldham Athletic boss until the end of the season. He's replaced Harry Kewell. He becomes the Latic's 8th manager since John Sheridan ended his 3rd spell as boss in September 2017. No manager has seen out a season at the club since Lee Johnson completed the 2013-14 season. And that's astonishing, isn't it?
That's ridiculous, isn't it?
I mean, we heard from the Oldham fan the other week, didn't we? And he did say that behind the scenes they're just an absolute shambles. And we know Keith doesn't really take too many prisoners, does he? He'll say what he thinks, and I do wonder how he's going to get on with that sporting director at Oldham. I wonder if he's I know he's only there till the end of the season, but I do wonder if he's basically, if he can get them away from trouble, he might say, right, if I'm staying next season, this is what I want. I want control over things, because I know he wasn't overly happy about Holdsworth being involved, was he, at Carlisle?
No, by all accounts, Keith is a little bit of a control freak, so I've heard. So, yeah, it'd be interesting how that works out.
Yeah, I think we all know that. There you go. Okay, Mike, before we do all the final bits, let's round up the quiz then for this week. So the quiz question was, I want to know the 11 players or former Carlisle coaches who've obviously played or coached Carlisle United but have also been in a World Cup squad. So there's 11 to name. You might struggle with some of the earlier ones, but give it your best shot. See what you can come up with.
Well, Peter Beardsley.
Yeah, Peter Beardsley is one of them. He played in the 86 and 1990 World Cups for England.
Pascal Chimbonda.
Pascal Chimbonda, indeed, was in the France squad in 2006 when they were runners-up. Didn't actually feature, but he was in the squad.
Ian Hart.
Ian Hart was involved in 2002 for the Republic of Ireland, yep.
Now, I'm going to carry on with my 2002 Republic of Ireland theme, and I'm going to say Graham Kavanagh.
He's not right. He was not in the Ireland squad for that World Cup. I mean, when you look at some of the players they had in that squad, it's actually not that much of a surprise he wasn't involved, because there's some good players back then.
Yeah. Was Rory Delap within that squad?
No, he wasn't involved either. No, there's no Republic of Ireland players in that squad. In fact, there's no Republic of Ireland player in there. That's a clue for you.
Okay. Some of these are going to be obvious now, aren't they?
I mean, there's one very recent one that you're missing.
From the 2018 World Cup?
Yeah. A very, very obvious one.
Well, you say it's obvious, but
come on. He was England's number one.
Oh, Jordan Pickford, of course, yeah.
I don't know, you missed that one, so yeah.
Yeah, well, because I was thinking Dean Henderson, no.
Well, no, that'll be the next one, won't it? So there you go, we hope. Okay, so you've got, let me quickly count that up. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 so far of the 11. I might start giving you some clues. One of them, I think, only played 2 games for us.
Oh, that's naughty.
But he's quite a well-known player because he got called up to this World Cup squad just because his mother was born in that country.
Chris Birchall.
Chris Birchall, indeed, is correct. 2006 World Cup for Trinidad and Tobago. So that's 5. Okay, one of them's a one-game wonder that me and Dan banged on about quite a bit. Before your time, to be fair, so you might struggle a little on this one. Played for Cameroon at the 1990 World Cup. It's
Pagal.
Jean-Claude Pagal, yep, that's correct. In fact, I told a lie there. There was another Republic of Ireland player, but not at the 2002 World Cup. In the 1990 and 1994 World Cup, a former Carlisle player or manager, hint, hint, was in the Republic of Ireland squad for those two World Cups.
John Sheridan.
John Sheridan, indeed, was in the Ireland squad for those 2 competitions. Okay, so I think going back, you've got them. You've got 4 more to guess. Now you're going to struggle with some of these, to be honest with you. One of them played for Poland at the 1986 and 1990 World Cup.
Not a clue.
Dariusz Kubicki. Okay. He played, I think, about 9 games for us at the start of the 98-99 season. Okay, so the 3 remaining ones are all pre-Peter Beardsley. and you will not get them. So I'm going to have to give people the answers to these. So the first Carlisle United representative at a World Cup, or player who used to play for Carlisle, is Ivor Brodis in 1954 for England. He went to that World Cup. And the other two are former managers, and they both play for Northern Ireland. And they are Harry Gregg, who played for Northern Ireland at the 1958 World Cup. I mean, literally months after he was involved in the Munich air crash as well, which is quite incredible. And David McCreary, he was at the 1982 and 1986 World Cups for Northern Ireland. So there you go. So that's the 11. So if anyone wants to play along with family and friends who maybe don't listen to the podcast, I'll give you the answers there. So these are former Carlisle United managers or players who've been in World Cup squads, and they are Ivor Brodis for England in 1954, Harry Gregg for Northern Ireland in 1958, Dave McCreary for Northern Ireland in 1982 and 1986, Peter Beardsley for England in 1986 and 1990, Dariusz Kubicki for Poland in 1986 and 1990, Jean-Claude Bugle for Cameroon in 1990, John Sheridan for the Republic of Ireland in 1990 and 1994, Ian Hart for the Republic of Ireland in 2002, Chris Birchall for Trinidad and Tobago in 2006, Pascal Chimbonda for France in 2006, and Jordan Pickford for England in 2018. And hopefully we'll be getting Pickford and Dean Henderson in the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, and maybe Jared Branthwaite. You never know.
Yeah, it's coming in.
We hope so, because we'll be getting a nice big wedge of cash if that happens. Yeah. I think it's fair to say. Mike, that's it for this episode. Thanks once again for joining me. Really do appreciate it. As ever, if you've got any comments or feedback, and we've had a few emails recently, thank you for sending those in. A lot of people talking positively about the content of the show. We really do appreciate that. If you've got any comments or feedback, you can contact us by email to bruntonbugle@gmail.com, via Twitter to @bruntonbugle, or you can catch us on the Be Just and Fear Not Facebook group. We're always on there having a chat about all things Carlisle United. As ever, if you've not done so yet, you can subscribe to the show on any good podcast app, so Acast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, anything like that. Basically, give it a try, and you'll get every episode then straight into your inbox. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Mike, the world map of listeners, we've got a new country.
Go on.
It's the Philippines. We've got a listener in Manila. So Manila Blues, we're giving you a shout out there. If you want to drop us an email or maybe contact us on Twitter, we'll give you a proper shout out by name on the show if you really want. If you're listening anywhere across the world, I do wonder if people actually get to this point in the show. They probably stop before they get this far. But if you're listening in any country like Spain, I think we've had contact from the Spain listener, but listeners in Chile or in Kenya or in France or Mexico, if you want to give you a shout out, drop us a message and we'll give you a shout out at the end of the show. Definitely well up for that. Mike will be back next week. I think me and Dan are actually going to try and record a special show early next week, because we've got a bit of spare time, both of us. I think we're both off one day next week, so we're not sure what that's going to be yet, but we'll obviously let you know once it is recorded. We'll be back probably Wednesday, Thursday again next week, Mike, I think, to review the next two games. Yeah. Probably talk about how the season's over, maybe.
Yeah. If I haven't ended it all by then, I'll speak to you then.
There you go. Thanks everyone for listening, and up the Blues.